Welcome into Flag for Discussion, episode 19 for Monday, August 18th. My name is Harbaugh Merkazi. He's Jace Hatfield. Thanks so much for tuning in, for consuming this. Look, it's game week. We've been doing this podcast since April. And Jace, it's finally game week. We can actually discuss real college football games. And the entire reason we started this, we're done with all the off-season BS and all the playoff expansion hype, all the random crap that fills our off season. Now we get to talk about the nitty gritty, college football games, player performances, all the fun stuff. Are we ready, Jace?
I'm so ready. You're gonna have to bear with me a little bit. I'm on the tail end of a head cold. Farbaugh's gonna have to do some heavy lifting for me today, but I'm pumped to talk college football. Some games.
I had a trainer in high school tell me you perform your best when you're sick because it forces you to focus more. While Jace did put out that forewarning, I want to point out also this is Jace's flu game, and we're gonna get through this together. We're gonna talk about all the stuff that's happening. Michigan just got their the quote-unquote hammer brought down on them, even though it wasn't a real hammer, is half the media is trying to point out. The Big Ten apparently wants to hypothesize a 24 to 2018 playoff field, which is god-awful. And then, as I mentioned, the only thing we wanted to even talk about on this show was the Iowa State-Kansas State game and all the other games coming up. So we have picks for all the Week 0 games. We have our breakdown of the Iowa State-Kansas State game in Ireland. And then if we have time, there's a couple funny topics to chat about. Obviously, Texas Tech, we know their Tortilla Gate and everything that they do, their fans do. I want to call it Tortilla Gate. I feel like that's fair at this point.
That's fun. That's fun.
But their fans unleash a bunch of tortillas onto the field at the start of every game, and there's a funny story that's going on about that. All right, before we get going, make sure you're tuned in to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. We're on YouTube at Flag for Discussion, on TikTok at Flag 4 Discussion, and on Twitter at F 4 Discussion. We are ramping up, ready to go. It's college football season. I think we can talk about it. I mean, Jace, before we get into it, do you consider Week 0 the start of college football? I know there's some conversations out there from people who don't see this as the start of college football because there's only like 5 or 6 games going on. It's not any of the biggest teams. I think it's a bunch of bullshit, but do you consider this the start?
I feel like the first game that I'm like, okay, I know a little bit about these teams. I'm gonna tune into this. That for me, like in the heart, is the start of college football. And this year we got Iowa State, Kansas State, Week 0. So for me, this is the start of college football because you actually have teams that I care to watch in a game that I'm going to be excited to watch. Granted, I'll watch all the other ones more just because I'm a sicko than anything else. But I like the first game of the year that I'm like juiced for and I'm genuinely like going to be tuned in and that people are also going to be tuned in for, so there'll be discourse, I think is in my heart the first game. So Week 0 this year is the start. I do wish we had a more standardized start though. I don't like having like the Week 0 where only a couple teams play and most don't. I wish it was all the same week, but yeah, this is the start of college football for me. It means we go to 2 podcasts a week. Maybe that's the new threshold for myself.
I missed that point. I missed that bit of housekeeping for everybody. So starting next week, we will be going to 2 podcasts a week. We're going to be recapping games, hopefully on the first show of the week, and then we're going to be previewing the next week's games on the Wednesday, Thursday show of the coming up. But yeah, I think that might be, at least in future years, the sign of college football season when we go to 2 shows a week. But for now, we're on our last one show per week episode of the year. Jace, yesterday, I don't want to say it's over because Michigan's appealing it, but this years-long fiasco that's gone on with the Michigan Connor Stallions, Jim Harbaugh cheating, sign stealing scandal is now kind of come to a head. The NCAA released their punishments for Michigan. First of all, bullshit. They suspended Sherrone Moore one additional game, in addition to the 2 games that they said that Michigan proposed that he'd be suspended for. They self-imposed the first 2 games. They got a series of fines that will eclipse or surpass $30 million. But the NCAA basically described it as this is the equivalent of scholarship losses and a postseason revenue loss that they could have suffered if they added a postseason ban. There's a lot here. Jim Harbaugh got a 10-year show cause. What's funny about that is that'll begin after 2028 because he currently has another show cause on him. So Jim Harbaugh is not banned from becoming a college football coach, but if he ever wants to come back, he will have a show cause until 2038. I mean, I'm here for it if he wants to come back and coach in his 70s, but I think we've seen the last of Jim Harbaugh as a college football head coach. Connor Stallings got an 8-year show cause. There's a lot to get into with this move. We've been fired up about this since the news came out yesterday, so I want to give you the floor.
Yeah, I feel like this whole time, I think any reasonable person kind of knew there was no real hammer. I think it was like a plastic, what's the brand, like Little Dykes, like the plastic hammer coming down. It felt like a whack-a-mole situation.
It'll squeak when you hit it.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like this is exactly what I had expected this whole time. The fact that they held a press conference for it was kind of crazy too. I can't imagine like putting everyone in a room together and be like, yeah, we're actually huge wimps and we're selling out to TV deals. So here's our little thing. It was also interesting to like admit like we should have given postseason bans. We should have vacated. We should have, they did cheat. We should have done more. We should have taken scholarships. But we're just going to do this because it's the equivalent. That just feels weird to me. Like if you're saying they deserve that, then you should probably give them that. If you're saying they didn't, then don't give them anything. Suspending Sherrone Moore for 1 game in 2026 just doesn't really feel like, okay, like he's going to miss, I don't know who they play in their season opener. I doubt it's anyone fancy. That's interesting.
I think it's the Germany Central Michigan game.
Okay, yeah. I don't get I mean, honestly, if I'm Sherrone Moore, that's even better. I have to go to Germany now. So yeah. I don't really get it. I think we could sit here and argue all day about what they should have gotten, if it's fair, especially when you compare them to like what happened to USC with Reggie Bush. Like it definitely doesn't stack up comparatively to what the NCAA is saying, what they've done in the past. Regardless, though, I think the bigger conversation, the moving forward conversation is what does this mean for the NCAA and what does this prove about the power dynamic in college football? If I'm the Big Ten, this immediately tells me we, including the SEC, we have all of the power in the world. Like it is us and the TV companies. That's all that really matters. I think this proves the NCAA is a fly on the wall. They're useless. I said this to Harbaugh yesterday. This sealed the deal for me. I don't think this is the only reason. This is one of many. In 10 years from now, there are going to be kids taking sports business classes at colleges. They're going to be writing case studies on how the NCAA fumbled college football and college basketball, men's and women's. This is going to be one of the main points, main paragraphs, biggest reasons why they'll talk about it. I just think it shows the TV money and conferences hold all the power. If you couldn't properly punish a team and do it in a way that was fair to how you've done things in the past, I think it completely shows your cards and revealed. And I think they made the quote of, sorry, I'm rambling here. They made that quote of like, oh, we didn't want to hurt students who are going to be there or student athletes who will be in the future who weren't a part of what happened in the past. It's like everything you've done previously is a part of that. And what does that say about, if I'm a coach, this doesn't scare me at all. Who's to stop you from tampering? Who's to stop you from recruiting violations, from cheating with like sign stealing and stuff? You can easily just make an argument. Oh, that's just people in the past. Don't hurt the young generation coming into the school. You could do what Michigan did. And the second that season ended, they won a national championship. That entire coaching staff had a mass exodus to the NFL. They got out as fast as they can, which should have been an immediate red flag for the NCAA. Like the show cause, sure, but I don't think Jim Harbaugh. I think he did that knowing that was his last ride in college football. I don't think this punishes him at all. He's happy in the NFL now. I just think it's a bad look, and we can get into more of what that means for the future. But it's a bad look for the NCAA for sure.
For me, it's not a matter of what did Michigan do something wrong, because that's been litigated. The NCAA said they found evidence there was wrongdoing there. Connor Stallings has admitted to it. Michigan has admitted to it. The Big Ten has admitted to it. Everyone's admitted to them doing something wrong. 5 years ago, 6 years ago, whenever the Missouri case was, they got a multi-year postseason ban for an academic scandal that happened there. Like you mentioned, the Reggie Bush scandal at USC. The worst part of that was the fines and sanctions and everything that came down in USC came down 6 years, 5 years after anyone involved in the program was still there. It became Lane Kiffin's problem. It was no longer the people, people want to litigate as Reggie deserved it or the people at USC at the time deserved it. No one at USC at that time, in 2015, 2016, whenever the sanctions and the punishments came down, were there at that point. On one hand, I kind of commend the NCAA, but by saying we don't want to punish current student athletes and current coaches for the actions of the previous administration. But at the same time, it's clearly just a mark of the NCAA recognizing the reality that we are in an era where postseason bans are gone. We can't instigate postseason bans. We can't allow what it really is instead of charging and punishing student athletes and the players by banning them from the postseason, they're punishing the administrations by charging a large sum of money. And don't get me wrong, the money that Michigan got fined is a massive amount, but Michigan's got that money. Michigan, all they have to do is call up a donor and be like, hey, if you give me this, we're done. And we kept the Natty, we kept the wins in 2023. The other aspect of it is, I think the NCAA recognized they're weak. And they recognized if they wanted to come down with a true hammer on Michigan, postseason bans, vacating wins, giving a larger suspension of Sherrone Moore, whatever you can come up with or think of, not only would Michigan have fought it tooth and nail, both sides, I know there's millions of dollars, both sides have legal fees here. The NCAA didn't want to go to battle there. All the Big Ten, all the conference commissioners, the school presidents, they just installed this new college sports commission that's overseeing NIL deals and acting as the enforcement arm of that part of college sports. So you're telling me if this news came down and the NCAA came down with a hammer on Michigan, wouldn't that give everyone just more of a reason to say fuck you to the NCAA, excuse my French, and just say we have an enforcement arm, we have our own sport, and our sports exceeded your power, the NCAA. So for me, I think the NCAA recognized that they're weak in this, and if they come down with a true hammer, that not only would it get really expensive, it would get really hard, it would get really messy, and it would also just get to a point where they might lose every grip they have on college football as an enforcement arm, as an overseer, as an organization. I think all of that is the main reason this came down. I don't think anyone expected them to get really punished, and we've talked about it. A lot of media types have talked about it, about how there are media contracts in this from Fox, from ESPN, from CBS, from the CW, that money is at a level that cannot be joked with anymore. And Michigan, unfortunately, is one of those programs that if you're paying the Big Ten billions of dollars to air their games, and all of a sudden you're telling that network media conglomerate, hey, we can't your Michigan games are no longer going to be as important or as top must-watch TV because their postseason viability is just shot. They can't make the postseason. There's a whole lot of stuff going into this. I know I'm talking a bunch. I want everyone to know, like, do Jason and I probably feel they should have gotten more? Sure, absolutely. But in 2025, in today's day, this is about what you should have expected. And this is about, like, Michigan should feel very comfortable. I do have I don't know if I agree with the take that it cost $20 million to win a national championship, because I think that was a very particular environment. I'm just kind of glad that this era is almost over. And I'm glad that it didn't take 6 years to come down. It came down 2 years later, and that's still too long in my opinion. That's another sign the NCAA is just messed up. But I'm just glad that this is theoretically over.
Yeah, it was really annoying to keep once a month to have the NCAA be like, oh, actually, we have new evidence. And then, like, evidence was exactly the same as we had known before. Yeah, 2 years is still too late. Like, I feel like the investigation led to, like, exactly where we all thought it was 2 years ago anyway. So I feel like this is just way too late at this point. But I'll see if I can put my take together here. I do think that this was one of the cornerstone pieces of why college football, and probably what will end up being men's and women's college basketball, how big they are, will move off of the NCAA into their own governing bodies. Definitely college football for sure. We'll stick with college football for now. I think it's twofold here. I think, number one, it's going to open the door for a lot of coaches and teams to push the limits of rules. Like, who's to stop you from tampering now? We've had rumors of tampering in the past, and nothing's really come out of that. What's to stop you from that? What's to stop you from recruiting violations and going after high school kids, maybe in a little bit of a way that you shouldn't in terms of money and things like that? What's to stop you from NIL issues with money and things of that nature? And then also on the field cheating. What's to stop you from doing that? I think the punishment, the crime is well worth the punishment, right? A national championship is well worth what Michigan got right there. I think the combination of, as coaches start to push the limits of what you can do, it's going to become more and more common to push the limits. And I don't know if the NCAA has what it takes to put the wall barriers up and to put a hard stop to it and make it a fair sport. I think the combination of that with the combination of this opened the door for SEC and Big Ten, I think it makes them realize the power is us and the TV networks. The money is us and the TV networks. The NCAA is just kind of this middleman that's a thorn in our side. I think the combination of those two things is going to start to reach a point where the Big Ten and the SEC are going to have a conversation, say, at what point do we just ditch these guys? They're utterly useless to us. Let's figure out our own rule book. Let's figure out our own TV deals, and let's move forward. And obviously, once that happens, I think the ACC and the Big 12, the Pac-12, all these conferences are definitely like, yeah, let's jump ship. There's more money in this. It's more exciting. Nobody's going to watch NCAA football that's just Conference USA in the Sun Belt, right? Like, people are going to watch where the big programs are. I think that's something the NCAA is going to feel in 10 years from now, and why I make the case of, I think case studies are going to be written about that from college students. The NCAA will then be down to, like, you know, they'll govern the field hockeys and the rowings, and no disrespect to those sports, they're just non-revenue generating sports. So the NCAA will definitely stay the governing bodies there. But when it comes to revenue generating sports, I think this is example one of, hey, we don't really need these guys. They're not doing anything beneficial. The NCAA had two choices: either play it really soft and play favorably to the Big Ten and say, like, hey, you know, we really respect you guys and we need your money, so we're going to go really gentle on you, which would have been an issue. Or they could have gone really hard and said, we need to prove our worth, prove our strength. We need to crack down on this. I think either one of those strategies would have had a lot of negatives to them. I think either one of them would have been better than the middle ground of, like, we're going to kind of come at you with this it's a big fine. But like you said, Michigan's going to chalk up that money pretty quickly. I already have a lot of friends who are Michigan fans who have already said, yeah, if they opened up a GoFundMe, I'd throw $100 in there right now. That's gained momentum on Twitter. I think playing the middle ground was the worst thing they could have done. I have a question for you, though. This is a discourse I've seen on Twitter. Where do you put the Michigan national championship? 10 being it's the most legitimate, cool national championship you've ever seen. 1 being it is an absolute joke, and I will never even have a second thought that it is a real national championship. Where does it rank for you on that scale.
I might be in the minority here, but one of the reasons they didn't vacate wins or the national championship in general was because the notice of allegations came so early in that season that the NCAA confirmed the cheating on field wasn't happening towards like the Ohio State game, the Penn State game, and throughout the playoff. So theoretically, obviously, the information they had in advance could have still helped them, but no one involved in that at that point in those playoffs were still part of the organization. I still think that was like my problem is like, what do you do with a guy like Zach Zinter, who was just one of the best players and people in college football that year? What do you do with like there were some guys on that team that they didn't the players didn't. It's just like I would probably say it's like a 7. Like it's for me it's a bummer that that team might be looked at with an asterisk now because the team was still built the right way. The team was still developed. Yeah. The team used NIL to bring back their juniors to become seniors. The team still, like, whatever people want to talk about Harbaugh, really good coach, and he established an identity. They were going to run the ball. They were going to be smash, like they were just going to smash you. The offensive line was great. JJ McCarthy was good. They had an elite defense. So, like, yes, they had evidence that it had helped them in the past, but one of the reasons that those games and that national title wasn't vacated by the NCAA was because this news came out so early that they were able to get those people and get that system out of the building as much as they think they did. So I don't think that it's a illegitimate national title. I don't think that's an illegitimate Ohio State or Penn State win. And I know the main people that are actually pissed off about this aren't the general college football fan. I think a lot of college football fans are upset and frustrated that they didn't get more because they cheated. And I think a lot of college football fans are also happy, like you and I, that this is not going to be a news story every 2 weeks and it's like ending. But at the same time, I also think a lot of college football fans are just in a position where it was they did, going back to what I said, they admitted they did wrong. Everyone the only person I think who hasn't admitted they did wrong is Jim Harbaugh. So everyone involved admitted that they had something wrong. One of the reasons Sherrone Moore got suspended was he admitted to deleting text messages before the investigators came and took his school issued phone. That's all long story to say. I don't view it as an illegitimate title because I think the team was still built the right way. They were still an elite team. And as far as we know, there was nothing that amongst these scandals that helped them win the biggest games of the year. That I said, this is the third time I'll say it, but they played Penn State. They played Ohio State. Harbaugh wasn't coaching those games. He was suspended. And then they played in the playoff, and they won those games too. And as far as we know, the cheating wasn't happening in those games.
Yeah, there was a couple pieces still there, and I'm sure they had some information on teams at that point, but it wasn't. Yeah, at that point they had cleared out like stallions and stuff. I'm around there with you. I think I'm at a 5 or a 6. I think it was the best roster in college football this season that they won it, and I think that they probably win it, if not still are amazing without any of the cheating. I do think that it taints it. I think the respect I have for it is what's mostly tainted, especially when Harbaugh left and he was like, what it means to be a Michigan
such a
man.
bummer.
Don't cheat, lie, don't steal. I'm like, dude, You did all 3 of those things, and now you're trying to like parade it. And then I also think when they played victim every time he's been in trouble, and they like kind of played victim, or like, oh, poor us, let's have a tribute
Michigan
for
versus
him.
everybody.
Like, I think that really rubbed me the wrong way. Like, you're the bad guys here. Like, you're the ones playing dirty and cheating. And also the part that really tainted it for me was like how they would give Tennessee signs to South Carolina or Kentucky to like beat Tennessee. And it worked. And it took Tennessee out of the playoff because that was a team that they were afraid that they might not match up well against. Like when they were doing that kind of stuff too, I think that really tainted it for me. I think it'll go a 5 or a 6. I am comfortable recognizing that was the best team in the country and that they probably win that national championship without it. But I think I'll never really respect cheating like that. And then also, I think the inability to like admit until after it was all done and the kind of the playing victim during it rubbed me the wrong way. And I think when they went out and ruined other people's seasons, that like Tennessee's and stuff, ruining their seasons, I find that really messed up. Like if you're going to cheat, at least cheat to your own benefit. But once it got out of hand where it's like, okay, now you're sending it to other conferences to ruin other teams that you're afraid of season. So that way you don't have to play them in the playoff. I think that really tainted it for me. I'm going to go like a 5 or a 6. I will recognize that they won a championship. I don't think I'll ever respect it, though. I'll recognize it, but I won't respect it, I think, is my situation. It's unfortunate.
That's
I just
still
think
such a bummer for me.
Harbaugh handled it. Yeah.
It's still such a good team. It's such a good team. If you are just a diehard fan of football, they didn't throw the ball like crazy. They felt like your typical old school hard nose, good team, good defense, good offensive line, make the plays when you need to from your quarterback. All of that stuff was there, and they did a great job. They didn't beat Alabama with the cheating. They didn't beat Washington with the cheating. Obviously, look, I understand that there's people that were probably still in the program, but they did a good. They cleared out the linebackers coach. They cleared out some. I think strength and conditioning supports people. They cleared out obviously Stallions. Harbaugh was suspended for a bunch of that season. I respect your take of like not respecting the team, but I for me in terms of the national title, I can't like when you think about the Houston Astros, they cheated in that game. I don't respect that, and I don't see that as like in that series. And you could argue that was more of a blatant attempt to cheat, blatant attempt to have an advantage that the other team didn't have. And Michigan had that throughout probably for a lot of 2022, maybe even earlier in the early parts of 2023. But as far as we know, they didn't for most of the important big games in their national title year. It's an unfortunate reality that I know a lot of college football fans are going to see it as an asterisk national title, or they're going to taint it. They're not going to respect it. I feel like a lot of college football fans are at like a 1 or a 2. Obviously,
I think I'm being fair compared to most takes I've seen on the internet. Most people, I think, are at like a 1 or a 2. And I think that's how it's going to be, especially SEC fans. I think SEC fans will never take this as a real national championship. And I think and I think Ohio State fans, obviously, Michigan State fans, obviously, will never count as a real one. But
that's rivalries. That's like if it came out tomorrow that Alabama's doing something, the people that are going to have the biggest hate towards them are Georgia and like Auburn
and LSU.
Yeah, the other aspect of this that everyone is like missing is I know it was a rather soft punishment, but I think it still cracks down where the NCAA can still crack down. And you and I we've already talked about that. What I want to know now is like now that we have all this info, we've had a press conference, you've released your findings. Can we know what happened with Connor Stalions and Blake Corum? Like, can we know what was it? A vacuum company or like an air conditioning company?
Yeah,
they've owned a house together.
Crazy.
Like, can we know? Was that just NIL? Was that a front to get money to buy tickets for the games that he was sending people to? The other
whatever
aspect
that was,
of it,
was illegal for sure. I don't know what's going on with that.
So,
they could be in jail for whatever was happening there.
I don't want to relitigate the crime because everyone's talked about the crime plenty, and everyone's also admitted that the crime was wrong. What I just want to know more. Like I want to know more about what happened. This might be a hot take too. You might completely disagree with this. I would love to sit down with Connor Stalions and just pick his brain. Because if you watch, I know media and TV and Netflix will change things to fit a narrative. But if you watch his sign stealer thing on Netflix, that guy's brilliant. He's just cuckoo in the head. Like that guy is. It's the same thing you said of if they didn't cheat, they would have won the national title, and everyone would have looked at them as one of the best teams to win the national title. If Stallions didn't go down this massive route of sign stealing, he would have been a head coach at some point, possibly, because he's just viewed as a guy that not only knows so much about college football, about Michigan, but also a guy that knows how to win. He has a specific skill that would work as a CEO coach. I know it's a hot take, and I know he's one of the people that started this whole cheating scandal. So a lot of people are going to say, "Harbaugh, you have no fucking clue what you're saying." But at the same time, it's I would love to know what an alternate reality would have been of this didn't happen, but Stallions was just as brilliant. And where would he have ended up in 5-10 years? Because he's probably not going to be a college football coach anywhere or assistant anywhere.
No. Yeah, I think that ship has sailed. He's got the show cause. He'll be out. He can't coach for 8 years. And at that point, I think he'll be behind. I mean, yeah, he had his whole Michigan manifesto. He probably becomes one of the greatest. He doesn't cheat. He probably, with how smart he is, he probably becomes Michigan's head coach at some point in time and takes them down a great path. Fortunately, I don't think that'll ever happen. Was it worth a national championship? Potentially, maybe. I guess it depends on where Michigan goes the next 20 years. But yeah, he was a fantastic coach. I mean, his cheating scandal was pretty genius, honestly. All things considered, I do kind of respect the effort he put in. It genuinely, if it weren't for Jim Harbaugh playing victim, doing the don't cheat, don't lie, don't steal, I'm a Michigan man thing, I would have had no issue. They would have been a 7 or an 8, just because of his victim mentality, and then saying that on his way out, as he knows everything he's done. That is what really taints it for me. The Connor Stalions part I actually kind of respect. It was a very well put together cheating scandal that he did. I do think he's a good football coach. I don't hate how he handled it. It would be fun to ask him more about his LLC with Blake Corum, what that was. I would be curious to know how confident he was on play calls. I'm curious if it was hey, I think it's going to be this, or if it was yeah, no, this is exactly what's going on. Yeah, I'd be curious to see how in depth it was in that regard. I'd also want to ask him about the TCU game, because TCU is the one team, Sonny Dykes had said he got a phone call, that Michigan was stealing signs, and obviously you can't flip an entire playbook in 2 weeks, right? It takes years to do a new playbook.
Yeah.
So for him, I think when they flip signs, and they said they I can't remember what they call. It was a wide receiver screen, a bubble screen they would call. So they call that, but they changed it to being a guy over the top, and he scored a touchdown. The guy was butt naked, 60-yard touchdown against them. And that's when he was oh shit, this is legit. So I'd be curious to hear once that happened, if Stallions was oh no, or if so it would be interesting to hear how all that went. But maybe one day we'll get him on the pod.
I'm Connor Stalions. If you're listening to this, you're more than welcome. We would love to have you. Look, there's a lot to make from this. We've covered this from almost every angle I think you can. It's obviously a soft fine by the NCAA, but just to put a pin in it, if you expected anything more, you don't know the leverage that the NCAA doesn't have anymore. They just can't do it. They gave them a 25% reduction of official visits in 2025 through 2026. That is not going to do anything in today's era of recruiting. I'm sorry that Michigan. I know tomorrow Michigan's going to, or Monday, Michigan's going to get into the office, and they're going to be okay, so we just got to raise $20 million, $30 million, and we're done. That's it. They didn't get hurt scholarship wise. They didn't get hurt postseason wise. They are in a good spot recruiting, building the team moving forward. Sherrone Moore handpicked the games that he's going to be suspended for. Everything's coming up Michigan right now. There's two unfortunate parts for this for me is we don't get to there's a couple unfortunate parts. Unfortunately, everyone's going to see a probable legitimate national title as an asterisk title, and I mean, I just and it just looks like the dawn of someone else taking the reins and becoming the enforcement arm of the NCAA.
Yeah, it could be flagged for discussion.
Could be flagged for discussion. Would you want to be a commissioner? That seems like too much pain. Yeah, especially in college football. I feel like other sports have like a plan in place for things. I feel like college football is such a mess that I'd rather let someone else handle the pain. I'd just sit here and
yeah. That's if we could guarantee that this is successful down the line, I would pick this. But if there was no guarantee, I would be the commissioner. I would like that. It'd be fun. I would be a very fan focused commissioner. I would not be a money hungry commissioner, which I think would actually make a good product. That's obviously every guy will tell you that they have a plan. They could make it a good product, but yeah, I would take it. I think it'd be fun. I would love to see how I could what I could put college football into.
Speaking of becoming a commissioner, Pete Thamel this morning of ESPN posted a article saying the Big Ten has considered an idea of massive expansion of the college football playoff that would grow the postseason to 24 28 teams. For the 2018 model, the Big Ten and the SEC would each get 7 auto bids, while the ACC and Big 12 would each receive 5. There would be 2 auto bids for non-Power 5 conferences and then 2 at-large teams. Tony Petitti apparently ran this by his conference on Wednesday, and it's been begun being shared by others. Look, for everyone at home, this came out an hour before we started recording, so we haven't done a ton of research on this model. But the main things for people to think about is the Big Ten still wants the automatic qualifier model of the 16-team playoff. They want specific amount of auto bids. They want to get rid of the conference title game. They want to install 3 versus 6 games and 4 versus 5 games to get into the playoff, assuming their 1 and 2 seeds automatically would get in. The SEC did agree with that for a while, but the Big 12 came out saying they want like a more straight up, just at-large spots. The SEC now agrees with them, basically saying, why not just try to go, like, earn your spot in? Now the Big Ten is pivoting. Part of me feels like this is just a bargaining chip that the Big Ten's trying to put out there, trying to say, like, hey, I'm going to want a 28 team if you don't agree to my automatic qualifier, hoping that there's some middle ground that the conferences can agree to. But at the same time, I think if this ever happened, man, like, this is bullshit, right?
Yeah, this is awful. This would actually tank the sport, and this is legitimately, I think I would be a better commissioner than this if this is a real thing. I think I'm with you, though. I think this is negotiation 101 for the Big Ten here. I think they're over asking for everything that they do actually want, hoping to get the middle ground of what they want. This is a horrible idea. I also don't think it's a coincidence that this comes out right after the hammer came down, because like I said, I think this proves the power the Big Ten and the SEC are going to have. And I think immediately they recognize the power. All right, let's go put this out there now, knowing they'll get a middle ground that favors them. Automatic qualifiers I get why the Big Ten wants it, because I think the Big Ten knows in the heart of hearts they don't have 7 worthy playoff teams. I think the Big Ten is one of those conferences that year in, year out, I think Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, and Oregon, those 4 teams are probably always going to be up there for playoff contention. But after that, I think it's very hit or miss. I don't think the Big Ten will consistently have 7. The SEC, yeah, you will consistently probably have 7 playoff quality teams. The Big Ten won't, so I feel like this is them trying to be like, right, SEC? Come on, right? Like, it's like a gimme situation in golf when your putt is definitely worse than your buddies. You're trying to do a good situation. This is what that feels like to me. Like, I in no world want to watch 8-4 Iowa play 11-1 Alabama and lose 42-0. There's just the Big Ten. I'm sorry, you don't have that many worthy teams. I feel like they know that, so they're trying to get more in. Because if it were up to choose the best teams, I think the Big Ten would actually not have as many teams. I think the Big 12 would have an argument to have as many teams as like the Big Ten would in some years. The Big Ten's a top-heavy conference, always has been, and it looks like it will be for quite a while. But yeah, I'm not a fan of this. I don't think anybody is outside of TV companies. Probably the only people, investors. That's probably the only people that would benefit.
I can't like you and I have already said, and we don't need to spend that much more time on this. This is negotiating 101, and look, if we're wrong and in a year we're going into a season with a 2018 playoff, I'll raise my hand. I'll tell you I was wrong. But at the same time, if you're looking at this and saying this is the best path forward for college football, then you're out of mind. This is we've talked about the automatic call for like in 4 different shows already. Basically, what the problem with that is, if the Big 12 and the ACC agreed to the automatic qualifiers, they would be getting less auto bids, so they would be admitting to the Big 10 and the SEC that they are inferior products. Whether or not that's true, you cannot put that in writing if you're the commissioner of the ACC, if you're the commissioner of the Big 12. You are telling your school presidents who you work for that you are inferior than 2 other products of the Big 10 and the SEC. So all that said, I'm praying this doesn't happen. I think this is them trying to get something out of it, but we'll see. Like I said, this came out an hour ago, so maybe in 3 hours something else will come out and it'll legitimize it more. But I'm not worried about a 2018 playoff.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way that ever happens.
Moving from the Big 10 to the Big 12. Jace, we mentioned we have some games to talk about. Iowa State, Kansas State heading to Dublin, playing in the Aer Lingus Classic. Wow. I'm ready for football to start. I'm ready for games to start. We talked about at the beginning of the show, was like, do you like week 0 games? Do you like week 1 games? Because some people out there hate them. What are your thoughts on neutral site games in general? Because there are people that like vehemently hate them, and there's a reason they happen. You understand it's for money. I don't necessarily hate them, but I also see the point of like college football is meant to be played on campus.
Yeah, I like neutral site games when it's like this, like where I hate the neutral site games where it's Georgia, like when Georgia Oregon played neutral site and it was in Atlanta. It was like, all right, like that's just why are we doing this dance? That's not very fair. So I hate neutral site games when it's like that, or it's Texas is playing in Dallas against like Ohio State. It's not happening, but that's an example. I don't like things like that. I think the Dublin game is kind of fun. I think these are 2 teams that are kind of fun to go play in Dublin. Like I don't know why, but Iowa State, Kansas State kind of like have an Irish. Maybe it's like the farm side of things. They have an Irish vibe to them. I don't know. I think this is a perfect game to do in Dublin. I think it does kind of stink that it's a conference game for each of them, but at least because it's a conference game, they're both traveling basically the same amount. They're both facing the same complications. So when the neutral site games are even in terms of the output that you have to go and the fans that are going to be there, even opportunity, I like them and I'm good with them. So this is a fun one. I do like that they're doing it like week 0. So at least it gives them a chance to like come back, and it's not like in the middle of the season you're just doing something like this. I'm for this. I think I like this. This is a perfect way to do an overseas game. It's the perfect way to do, a neutral site game between 2 conference opponents. I think if you're going to do that, you have to do it like this. You can't do it in the middle of the season, or like I'll say I'm against like when the NFL does like the Brazil games. The players hated that last year. Like Dublin players have liked in the past, and I don't know. These 2 teams just feel Irish, even though they're not. They just do. So I'm for it.
I'm kind of in a pickle here because I think I don't mind it being a conference game. I do like these 2 teams being in Dublin and for this game. I also just looking back the last several, like Georgia Tech, Florida State played there. I remember one of the reasons Scott Frost finally got fired was when he lost to Northwestern in this game. I think that was the game he did an onside kick to start the second half or something. But that this specific game, the Aer Lingus Classic, love. It's such a celebration of football, of college football, and it's such a beautiful kickoff to the sport because I mean McAfee's out there, he's drinking 50 beers before he goes on ESPN. All the major media people are out there. It's just let's get this thing going. But at the same time, I hate the Germany idea for next year. I hate the fact that Michigan and Central Michigan, who I don't know my Michigan geography nearly as well as you do, but could probably drive to each other. And instead, they're like, let's hop on a plane and go out of country and play a football game. And mind you, no offense, Central Michigan, that game's going to be over in the first quarter. You want to put a good product out there, you need to have better options there. Like you mentioned the Brazil game for the NFL. I think the NFL probably has found the fact that they can only grow so much in the US. Like every Super Bowl is their most watched Super Bowl ever. But at some point they need to add viewers in Brazil, in Germany, in London. College football is not that. College football's charm is being on campus for your students. So I dislike most neutral site games. The Red River rivalry is great. The Aer Lingus Classic is great. You're right. The one that happened, the Chick-fil-A kickoff that happened where Georgia could drive to Atlanta and Oregon had to fly cross country, and you're calling that a neutral site game? That's just blasphemous. There's parts of that I don't like neutral site games, probably 85% of them. But outside of that, I like this one specifically. Right before we preview Iowa State, Kansas State, I kind of like when Utah goes to Allegiant Stadium against USC, and you're like, the conversation begins with who's going to fill the stadium more, who's going to have more fans there, just because it's right in the middle of both, and you just see a massive crowd of Utah fans. That was sick. So that's my thoughts on neutral site games. This game on its own. Do you have keys to the game for both sides before we pick the winner?
Yeah, I think if you're Iowa State, it's going to be picking up where you left off. They returned 14 starters from last year, including Rocco Becht, your star quarterback, and your 1-2 punch at running back that I've heard be coined cookies and cream. I like where they're at. They got 2 big transfer portal wide receivers. Everyone else filling in their gaps are going to be built from the program. Matt Campbell's back. Both coordinators are back. For them, it's just continuity. You were really good last year. You're coming off a bowl win against Miami. Carry that momentum. If they can pick up where they left off, they're going to be a really hard team to beat any point in the season, especially in game 1. If you're Kansas State, I think it's getting Avery Johnson and Dylan Edwards going. I don't think either one of them had the seasons they wanted to last year. In fact, I don't think either one of them have had the career that they've wanted to so far. I think every year Kansas State's gone into every single season with a lot of expectations because you have Chris Kleiman, a great head coach, won 7 of 8 national championships at North Dakota State before coming to Kansas State. He's been successful, but not successful in the way that I think he's wanted to. Avery Johnson's kind of been a hyped up quarterback. He was one of the higher recruits Kansas State's had at the quarterback position. Dylan Edwards, same thing at the running back position. They haven't really found their footing and taken off, especially that Chris Kleiman, FCS style offense where it's a lot of QB runs, a lot of halfback runs, a lot of RPOs, a lot of read options, things of that nature. They haven't really figured that out in the Big 12 yet, which is a conference I think that system can work in. I don't think you're going to figure that out in the SEC, but you could in the Big 12. So for Kansas State, I think it's starting hot. I think it's getting Avery Johnson and Dylan Edwards, their upperclassmen now, getting them rolling early. They're gonna have a lot of new pieces on the O line, so trying to figure that out, navigating it, is going to be the keys for them. Two teams, I think, with similar hopes this season, but in very different ways to get there. They have good players, but I think Iowa State's is more, how do we improve on an already good last season? If you're Kansas State, it's how do we figure it out? So it'll be interesting to see how this goes week 1. I won't give my pick yet, but I think that probably previews my pick pretty well there.
I think there's not much left for me to say on this. You're absolutely right. For Iowa State, I'll one-up you a little bit. I'll say, can we take what we did bring back the continuity. They did lose a couple very important pieces to that offense from last year, but for the most part, they are back. It helps having your quarterback back, just like Kansas State does, and it helps having Matt Campbell, who's one of the best coaches in the country, and very under talked about. Some years he's the number one coach on everyone's hiring cycle, and he just never takes the job. I think for me the key is Avery Johnson. I think if Avery Johnson came into last year almost as last year's Arch Manning, and I don't remember if he was necessarily the number one Heisman candidate, had the number one odds to win the Heisman, but he was top 5, top 3. I think he's out of the top 15 right now, which is how the mighty have fallen, but it doesn't mean the talent's not there. And everyone kind of expected Kansas State with Avery Johnson to run through the Big 12 last season, especially having Dylan Edwards there. If Avery Johnson can go from the 58% completion rate guy to 62, 64, Rocco Beck, similar. If he can go from 59 that he was last year to 65, 66, both of these teams might meet in the Big 12 title game. This game is really important because it's a conference game. A lot of week 1 games, people, like we've talked about LSU Clemson ad nauseum on this show, but neither of those teams, if they lose that game, will actually suffer anything in their conference standings. They can still make the conference title games. They can still make the playoff. It would just be an 0-1 start to the season. This is an 0-1 start to either of the Iowa State or Kansas State's seasons, but also an 0-1 conference record. So it's a huge opening to their season. I think, like I said, if Avery Johnson is there to take a step up, they do have. I just believe in Chris Kleiman, the coach, and like you said, we're gonna make our pick here. Iowa State at Kansas State, August 23rd, 9 a.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Dublin time, Ireland time. I don't know what the actual, like, we have Pacific Coast Standard Time, Eastern Time. I don't know what the actual, but it's 5 p.m. locally. Kansas State's favored by 3, Jace. Who you got?
I've got the Clones. Farbo and I, when we're doing picks, we'll be doing picks and spreads. So I got the Clones +3 here. I like them to win the game outright as well, but I'm going to roll with the Clones in this one.
I'm rolling with Kansas State. I'm gonna trust that last year was more of a aberration for Avery Johnson or a bump in the road for Avery Johnson rather than this is who he is, because the talent's undeniable. It's just there were some games he showed up. The BYU Kansas State game, I'm going to pull up the score, but wasn't it like 30-0 in the first quarter?
Yeah.
There were just some games that he just did not show up. And yeah, BYU won that game 38-9. Avery Johnson, 15-28, 130 pass yards, 2 interceptions, where he ran for 74. There's just some. I'm not asking him to be world's better, but I think if he can find a middle ground between being that top 5 Heisman contender and what he was last year, they can be pretty special this year. They're both going to Ireland. It's not like one of them's just driving 45 minutes. They're both going to have trouble starting out, probably. Everyone's going to be a little rusty to start out week 0, week 1. It's not just these two teams. I like the run game that Kansas State could possess. I like the quarterback involvement in that run game. Dylan Edwards, you should expect another step up from this year. I'm going to take Kansas State to cover and win the game and start out their season 1-0 in the Big 12.
Yeah, you made a good point earlier. I hate that one of these teams has to start 0-1 in the conference. These are two teams I have a lot of hope for in the Big 12. Also, Kansas State's probably one of the most talked about Big 12 teams to win it. And kind of shockingly, Iowa State's probably one of the least teams talked about to win the Big 12, considering they were in the conference title last year and returned most of those pieces. I do hate that one of these teams starts 0-1. But from a fan enjoyment, this is the best week 0 opening season game we've gotten since I can remember for quite a while. And normally they flirt with like teams who are notable but not great, but to have 2 ranked teams that I think are actually both very solid teams, That's rare. So I'm just excited to watch this game. A week from today, we will be texting about the outcome of that game, which is crazy to say.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I'll say this: the game last year, Florida State Georgia Tech, was a really great game, but after we found out what Florida State was going to be, it turned into a pretty crappy game. Like we thought, oh my God, Georgia Tech just upset Florida State. They just went 13-1 last year, and Florida State, and then all of a sudden Florida State keeps losing. They keep losing, and now no one sees it as a great game. But I thought last year, like, that was just such a beautiful start to the season. You're like, oh my goodness. All right, we're both taking. We're not both taking. We are on opposite sides of the Aer Lingus Classic. I have Kansas State to cover the 3. Jace has Iowa State to win and cover on their end as well. All right, that is our first game preview. We will get better at those. Not that that was bad, but we're just going to get into a routine of those. I want to talk about real quick before we get into our picks. And for everyone at home, we are going to have 5 games that we want to preview every week in terms of the betting odds. Obviously, betting is its own thing. If you're not comfortable doing it, if you don't know how to do it, if you don't have the finances to do it, we're not sponsored by anyone to say this, but I just urge you not to take part. Just listen along and maybe you'll learn something and then you'll feel comfortable to do it. But it's time to start picking those games. Before we do so, John Gruden went to Georgia and he told the Georgia players he would kill to coach in the SEC. He would kill to come back coaching. Obviously, a lot of what happened with him in the NFL towards the end has kind of been, he hasn't been exonerated, but he's basically, it's starting to be pulled away now. Like, and one of the reasons he was fired for cause from the Raiders. He's with Barstool now. 1, do you think he will coach again? 2, do you think he could coach in the SEC or in college football? And 3, would he be successful?
Yeah, I think would he coach entirely depends on. I think he's in a good spot as a person, like in terms of finances and career. So I don't think like he's going to be. It's not one of those things where Tulane could offer him a job. He's like, oh yeah, I need to get into coaching. I'm trying to build my rap sheet. It would have to be a really good opening that would want to reach out to him. I had actually said this without knowing. Josh Pate said the same thing until you mentioned it to me this morning. Like Arkansas could be a team that I could see parting ways with Sam Pittman. If you're Arkansas, let's give John Gruden a shot. Sure, why not? It's the energy. I think it could be good for recruiting for them. And he's a good coach. Like he's been really successful in the NFL before. So it's not like he's, just a personality you're bringing in. So something like that, I think, would be an opportunity for him, but it would have to be like a pretty solid gig in the SEC where the job would be his to take. I think he could be successful. I think that he would be a good recruiting coach. I think he genuinely loves football. He knows his X and O's. We've seen it, with his clips with Barstool. We've seen it. I mean, he's been the successful NFL coach before. I think he knows football. I think he could coach at the SEC level. I also think he would be a good recruiter. I think he's a football nut. I think with his time at Barstool, as goofy as it sounds to say, like, when you're trying to get 15, 16, 17-year-olds to come to your program, I think he's put up a good face for himself the last few years at working at Barstool and in social media that, I think it would be helpful for recruiting for him. He also just seems like such a football guy, so through and through, that I think no matter where he goes, like he would be able to bring in recruits, he'd be able to bring in transfers, and he'd be able to maintain those. If the X's and O's work out for him, I think he could be genuinely a good football coach. I don't know if he's going to be winning national championships and having dynasties, but I could see a world where he takes Arkansas and they're 9-3 and they're competitive. So I think that opportunity would be there for him, and I would like to see him. I think he'd be fun in the SEC. The things that went down with him and his downfall, that's probably a topic for another day or maybe another podcast. I think he's been given the second chance he's kind of been given it just as a person, not necessarily in football, but just as a person and a media member. I think he's done a really good job with. I think he's really kind of turned himself around. I would like to think that he has grown and learned from his mistakes, and he's a better person because of it. I would be happy to see him get a second chance, and I would have a lot of fun as a college football fan. And as somebody who, I do like John Gruden, I would like to see him get a second chance and really capitalize on that and prove that he's grown. And then also it's fun to see him as a personality in college football.
As an entertainer or as a fan, how could you not want to see that? How could you not want to watch every John Gruden press conference when he's the head coach of pick your favorite school here? I'm not going to copy you with Arkansas, but I initially thought maybe while you were talking, I was just thinking, Brett Lashley's not going anywhere. He feels like an SMU head coach.
I can see that.
They bought their way into the conference. He won't have much guardrails. What about Iowa? All of a sudden, you bring offense to Iowa. He's coaching the school. I mean, all of where he could go or why he could go, all hypothetical. I think it would be fun. And in terms of would he be successful, look, there's not a lot of people that hang around this sport as long as he has, who don't have connections everywhere, who can't hire the best general manager for them, who can't hire a really good coaching staff for them. There's people around the league, whether they're players, former players of his, or former staffers of his, who would jump at the opportunity to go coach at whatever school he wants to go to, and they are high-level football minds. And going back to what you said, is Gruden is just such a football guy. It would be so fun to just see him trying to explain the snap count to like some 16-year-old quarterback on a recruiting visit. Having that there, like you said, he might not take a lower level job because he's at a place in his life, age and money, that he doesn't necessarily need it. But at the same time, and he has a really good job that he has fun being a part of. I feel like if he all of a sudden was in the SEC, he's going to be one of those coaches that can recruit kind of the old-fashioned way, in addition to the new NIL infrastructure revenue sharing, because he's just going to be able to recruit based off his personality and just want guys that are all ball. And there's a lot that might go wrong because he is all ball. And I don't know. I just feel like there's a reason people are more calculated than you would think. I don't think Barstool just woke up one day and said, we want to offer you a job. I think it was a conversation between him and them saying, like, obviously they had to be interested, but they probably reached out saying, we want to get John back in the game. And Barstool definitely doesn't want to lose him, but one of the reasons Dan Mullen's the head coach of UNLV isn't because he used to be the head coach at Florida. When he got fired at Florida, people thought very poorly about him. He went on ESPN for like 3 years, and when you're on TV as a former coach, you're never wrong. You're seen as the smartest guy in the room. You're looking good because you got makeup on you. All of a sudden, you become the belle of the ball again. And I'm not saying this was Gruden's mentality going to Barstool, but he just wants to talk football and get paid for it. That's great. But at the same time, there is an aspect of getting yourself in front of the media again, getting yourself in front of people again, and all of a sudden it's like, yeah, I want to coach again. And I think he could do it. I think he will do it at some point. And I think it would be a lot of fun no matter where he's at. That's just my opinion. Could you imagine if Andrew Luck's like, hey, John, be Stanford's head coach?
That would be
how
fantastic.
Crazy
yeah, I'd be in on that. And give John Gruden a general manager. Like, I don't think John Gruden's probably at a point where he wants to do all of the college football head coach work. Give him a general manager and just let him be a coach. Let him focus purely on the fun part of recruiting and coaching. I think he would do good. I actually think he'd be a good coach.
I think I just found his home. His favorite quarterback snap count of all time is Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck's the GM of Stanford. Frank Reich, we all know that he's probably not going to be there next year. He's just the interim coach, unless he goes off and somehow reels off a 10-2 year at Stanford this year. I think, why not Stanford? That sounds fun. He's coached in the Bay Area before.
That would be awesome. I would be all in on that. And if you're John Gruden, like take the opportunity. I know it's not SEC ball. Like he said, he would kill to coach in the SEC, but maybe Stanford is the stepping stone you need to then go into an Arkansas, or if Lane Kiffin takes a bigger job, then you take the Ole Miss gig, something like that. So Stanford would be sick, though. I think that'd be fun. And the marriage with Andrew Luck would be fantastic. Get him back in there.
Or it would be a stepping stone to an NFL job again. Or it would be a 20-year career at Stanford or wherever he ends up being a college football coach at. There's one funny story I wanted to really get into before we get into our picks. Not really a ton to talk about, but I saw this yesterday and I audibly gasped saying, I cannot believe this is a real story. The Big 12 member institutions voted on a policy that would that would introduce a penalty in a game for the home team if there are 3 instances of fans throwing things onto the field. The only school that voted against it was Texas Tech. So we have to go back a couple years ago when Texas was still in the Big 12. Remember, they had water bottles being thrown onto the field. They had a couple issues with things just being thrown onto the field. So there is a serious aspect of this. There is a nature of, we don't want players or coaches or referees, officials, administrators on the sideline to get hit with something, get hurt, be knocked out, whatever it is. So there's a definite serious aspect of it. But the part of the story that I couldn't believe was Texas Tech was the only Big 12 school that voted against it. And I'm pulling up the quote right now. Texas Tech AD said the rules can change, but our tradition will not. And the tradition he's talking about is Texas Tech fans throwing tortillas onto the field at every kickoff. It's such an unbelievable story. I don't even know where to go from here. I don't know if there's anything to ask you, but I can't believe that was a real thing that I read.
At least with tortillas, it's a lot less dangerous than some of the other things that have been thrown. If you're a cheerleader and you're hungry, there you go. You just pick up a tortilla. At least that one's less dangerous, and it's a tradition, so at least they know when it's happening. So I feel like that one, maybe you write in a special rule for when it's coming, and it's not malicious, and it's not something dangerous. Unless if the day a tortilla becomes dangerous is the day I will be so sad, but maybe that's the day we cancel it. I will say I actually don't hate the idea of penalizing the team. I actually really like the idea of penalizing the team because as a fan, when you tell drunk college kids to not do something, they're going to do it. That's just the nature of a drunk 20-year-old. The only thing that you could get to make a drunk college kid not do something is say, I'm going to penalize your college football team for it. That'll actually get pause from these kids, because once they see the 15-yard penalty and the coach looks angry and the quarterback's looking at the student section really, then the kids will actually oh, we should probably stop. So this is the right way to go about it. It's not fining the school. Kids don't care about the fines. Because I remember when the Texas thing was happening, it was you're going to get fined $250,000 next time. And they did it again. Now it's $500,000. They do it again. The kids don't care about fines. They care about the product on the field. And if they see their team get backed up 15 yards and they make some punt, that'll actually turn it around. So smart thinking about the Big 12. Also, I remember when we were students at Oregon, we had an issue where they gave out these little flashlights that were strobe lights, green and yellow, basically, for a fun video they made. But a lot of kids just started throwing them onto the field, and that they were actually pretty dense. They're a little flashlight made of plastic and metal, glass in it, battery in it.
Cheerleaders started hiding
onto the field. Yeah, cheerleaders. I was on the field at the time, and thankfully I'm not a cheerleader, so I wasn't targeted. I was just a normal dude. So I wasn't getting targeted, but I'm looking over and the cheerleaders are had the signs over their head because people, that's where they were wailing them. And they were actually were coming in pretty hot. There were kids not just it was from, 20 rows back, just slinging that thing. And that was actually dangerous. And that was genuinely okay, this is not good. And and that was random. It just happened. So now the cheerleaders don't know what's coming. And then they think it's done. So they start going and another kid throws one. So there actually, are kind of issues with that probably should be fixed. And as fans, we should probably be a little bit more calculated. If the ref makes the world's worst call, I'm not telling you to throw something at them, but that's a little bit more excusable than, just throwing them at cheerleaders who are doing their thing. Tortillas, though, I'm good with tortillas. Write a rule in there that tortillas get a
as long as you don't freeze the tortillas, you can throw tortillas. Because
it becomes you throw frozen the edges and
Yeah. If you throw a frozen tortilla, then we might have problems because that might actually hurt somebody. No, the flashlights were crazy because I was sitting in the student section. I was like, I remember you guys down there, and they're so small that it's so easy to lose. Like it's not like
Mm-hmm.
you couldn't see them all, but imagine if if a player, if it ended up on the field, some kid threw a really good ball, had a really good throw, and it just ended up on the field. I How many of those flashlights do you think they found like 2 days later? Just because
Oh,
they were just everywhere.
at least like 50, and I'm sure I mean, they were cheaply made, so as soon as they hit the ground, they probably broke, and now you have like little batteries in the field. I do remember one of the cheerleaders. He had a genius idea. He took like one of the mega horns, whatever they're called, and like covered the end and like kind of made it a target. So that way, instead of throwing it at, he's like, I think his idea was like, these kids are going to throw these things. So at least they were throwing it at that, like trying to make it inside. And it
Yeah.
definitely like, it was okay. No longer, at least they're not hitting people on the field. And he kind of walked over the corner and did that. So shout out that guy. I don't know his name or anything, but smart by him. But it was actually dangerous. And I do remember standing there and they were going onto the field and like in between snaps, like while teams are in huddle or once the ball's going the other direction, like going on the field and like pulling them off. Just because I'm like, if a kid's trying to catch a fade in the corner of this end zone, you know, he steps on that could ruin the game for us, first of all, or it could also, injure somebody, roll an ankle, something like that. That was crazy though. I kind of forgot about that until you
Well,
mentioned this topic.
I hope that no one. I hope we don't have a throwing things on the field problem unless it's like tradition and it's unfrozen tortillas. Uh, let's not throw anything that could hurt people or players or fans out onto the field, please, fans. I know you're drunk and you're college students, but still. All right, let's pick your games. 5 games. We've already picked Iowa State, Kansas State. Kansas State is favored by 3. I had Kansas State to win and cover. You had Iowa State to win and cover. Saturday. I should have put these in order of time that they kick off on. But that's not what I did, so excuse me. 3:30 Eastern on Saturday, August 23rd. Fresno State takes on Kansas at Kansas. Kansas is a 12.5-point favorite. Jalen Daniels coming back for a revenge tour. Fresno State's lost a lot. Who you got?
I'm rocking with Kansas. Lance Leipold, Jalen Daniels. Give me the continuity. Fresno State, new head coach, and a very turned over roster. They did a good job, like putting it back together. Just as we've said, when you're a good Group of 5 school, you just get eaten a lot. All your good players are looking for better opportunity, rightfully so. That's what they should be doing, and it just gets difficult to maintain that. But at the same time, you can go clean up some talent that's not playing as much as they think that they should at high level programs. My one fun fact about this game. So we talked about Chris Kleiman, Kansas State head coach, who spent a lot of time being very dominant at North Dakota State. Matt Entz, the new head coach at Fresno State, spent last season at USC as a defensive coordinator, some fashion
Linebackers
coordinator
coach, something like that.
situation. He was the defensive coordinator for Chris Kleiman all those dominant years at North Dakota State. Matt Entz took over North Dakota State for 4 years and won 2 national championships, so he kept that momentum going. Great coach, knows how to win. I do think Fresno State will get back onto the saddle and be that really good Group of 5 program we're used to seeing. I don't think it happens week 1. I'll roll with the Jayhawks.
I just graduated online with an MBA from Kansas. I'm going to roll with the Jayhawks. Jalen Daniels is going to lead us to victory. I've never stepped foot on the campus, but I'm an alum now, so I have to rock with the Jayhawks.
We got to get Harbaugh to Lawrence.
We can do a show from Lawrence. How about that? We just got to get like a top 25 game, and we'll go. Stanford at Hawaii Saturday at 4:30 Eastern. Hawaii is a 2.5-point favorite. I don't know what to make of this game.
I tell you, shout out Timmy Chang, Hawaii's head coach, former Hawaii quarterback. When we were younger, he was just gunslinging. He would throw 5,000 yards, 50 touchdowns, and 48 picks. Like he was just gonna huck the ball. That's always fun. And then on the Stanford, like it'll be interesting. You have Andrew Luck as your GM. You have Frank Reich, NFL head coach, as your head coach. But for the fun of it, give me Hawaii. Give me Timmy Chang of Hawaii. Shout out my guy. I'd like to see them pull it off. I think that's not even more. That is a pure what my heart wants. There's no football thought process going into that.
I think Stanford has just admitted that this year's kind of a lost year. And Frank Reich is a good coach, and I think you and I both respect the heck out of him on the NFL side. And I think I would have respected the heck out of him if he was hired in like December to be Stanford's head coach. But he was hired after the whole Troy Taylor fiasco, and he hasn't really had a chance to really build anything. So I think they're hoping for the best, but they also understand that this could be a wash of a year for Stanford. So I'm taking Hawaii to cover the 2.5. Well, yeah, I'm going to take Hawaii to cover the 2.5 and win that game. So right now we've agreed on 2 and disagreed on 1. Let's get into, by the way, for everyone at home, we're going to have much better games once we do previews every week. These are just the only games we have access to right now. So this is kind of what we're stuck with picking. But massive game in Vegas. Idaho State taking on UNLV. Dan Mullen's UNLV. I think Alex Orgy's UNLV. UNLV's a 25.5 point favorite. 1 Eastern on Saturday. Who do you have?
Idaho State got stomped in the Big Sky last year. I only know this because my parents went to Weber State, which is a Big Sky program, and their football team's actually just pretty good. So my dad and I are a little tuned into it. Idaho State's they get stomped by the better Big Sky teams. The Big Sky teams get stomped by good UNLV teams. I'm going to ride with Dan Mullen and Alex Orgy. I think it's just a beatdown for Idaho State, unfortunately. Also, I don't have too much game analysis other than what I just said, so I'll roll with the Rebels.
I think that's probably true, but I can't principle-wise take a 25.5 point favorite. Look, they could win 40-5. 40-7. Like, a couple years ago when I was in New York, I remember I was making a friendly wager with one of my coworkers about some game, and the favorite was like a 33.5 point favorite. And I was like, if they cover, we made a bet over Chipotle burritos. If they cover, you buy me a burrito. If the other team covers, I buy you a burrito. And somehow they cover the 33.5 point spread. Just principally cannot take a 25.5 point favorite. Even though Dan Mullen, that would be a great way for Dan Mullen to start out his career at UNLV. I'm taking Idaho State to cover the 25.5 points. Please put up 10. Like, if you put up 10, I feel pretty good. Unless UNLV's at like 38. Last game. This game isn't this week. It's part of the week 1 slate. Boise State at South Florida. Boise State's a 6 point favorite. We both agree on this one, by the way. I like that. I think we're both pretty high on him. But who you got?
Yeah, this is a Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern game. Just so wild. But that's kind of why we threw it in here. Boise State -6 at South Florida. I got South Florida. I'll let you speak. You know a little bit more about their head coach system, but I actually like South Florida this year. I like Byron Brown, their quarterback. I think he's actually pretty special. And I do think Boise State has lost a lot offensively and defensively. Also, you know his name, Ashton Genty. It's a team that relied so heavily on a very dominant player. I think it is hard to lose somebody that is that essential to your team, and then to come out and try to flip and turn that around and play a different brand of football. I don't think they have an Ashton Genty 2.0. I could be proven wrong. I don't know a whole lot about their backfield room. I'm going to guess they don't. I don't really know if I believe in I'd never get his name right. Maddox Madsen.
Maddox Madsen.
Okay, nice. Maddox Madsen. I don't know if I believe in him a whole lot, especially Boise State going to South Florida in August. It's going to be hot. It's going to be humid. It's going to be sea level. I don't know if Boise State's going to be well equipped for that, and I don't know if they have the facilities like Oregon where they can change the climate. So I'm going to go with South Florida. I think that the Bulls are a pretty solid program this year, and I'm going to ride with them here.
I'm also taking South Florida to cover the 6, and I also would take the money line on it. I think you just said everything. I like the coach. I like the quarterback. I also really like the fact that South Florida is going to be hanging out while Boise State's going to be traveling a long way. So this is the first of 3 top 25 matchups South Florida has. They're playing number 25 Boise State. The next week they're on the road at number 15 Florida, on the road at Miami, number 10 Miami the following week. So pretty tough September for South Florida. They have their win total. I checked; it was 6.5. So it feels like Vegas isn't expecting them to do a lot, but I think a lot of that is just the first 3 games are all against ranked teams. Boise State, look, they're going to be good. I really like their coach. I really like everything he like the way he represents his team and his players. I just think last year's team, Ashton Jeanty wasn't just a really good running back. He was their offense. He was their motor. He was, I'm going to gain 5-6 yards here. If I don't break it for a touchdown, maybe Maddox can gain 3 yards, 4 yards on the through the air. I don't think Maddox Madsen was seen as a game-breaking quarterback who can make plays outside of the structure of his own offense. And I'm sorry if that's just disrespectful. He threw for 3,018 yards, 23 touchdowns, 6 picks. Pretty good numbers. I just feel like that offense was relying on Ashton Jeanty to do a lot of it and to set up Maddox to make things. I don't see a lot of special there. Whereas I think South Florida and Alex Golesh, John Summerall and Alex Golesh are going to be the next group of 5 head coaches to move on to Power 4 head coaching jobs. And I think if you look at South Florida's schedule, they have 3 top 25 teams going into to start their season. I think they are placing a heavy emphasis on this game to beat Boise State, start out 1-0, and then hope that you can beat one of Florida or Miami or come close to one of those 2, or else you're risking an 0-3 start. So I'm taking South Florida to win and cover. That is our top 5. That is us picking 5 games for this week. South Florida, Boise State is obviously the start of week 1 next week, but it's just we didn't want to pick Sam Houston at Western Kentucky. No disrespect to either of those 2 programs. I didn't want to do research on those 2 teams. We also have a parlay that we will pick every week. This week, once again, it's a little bit more vanilla because we only have 5 games to pick from. But we are going to put $5 down every week on some parlay that Jason and I both agree with. Kansas 12.5, South Florida money line, Hawaii money line, and we took the over 49.5 total in the Iowa State-Kansas State game. So we're going to keep track of all of these picks. I want to reemphasize, and I know this, like I said, this isn't we're not sponsored or partners with any betting website, so we aren't required to say this. But if you are not comfortable, don't have the financial means, or don't know much about sports betting, sports gambling, it's a really easy trap to get stuck into. So make sure if you are going to do it, you not only have the financial means to put down $5, $10, whatever you want on a game, but also you feel comfortable knowing what you're doing. And if you don't. Taking our show, taking our picks as entertainment, follow along with us, you'll get there. I know that's like go ahead.
The nice thing about betting is like you can look at the lines. You don't have to place any money. You can look and say, Kansas State -3. I think I like Iowa State. And you don't have to put money on that, but you can track that. Like, I was right there. I wasn't. So you can always track your picks without needing the money to be behind them. It's still the same pick. It's the same energy, same juice. Farbo and I are just fortunate enough to have a little bit. We're not high rollers, trust me. We're just fortunate enough to have a little bit of extra pocket change. Yeah, we're splitting a $5 bet, if that tells you anything. But we're fortunate enough to have a little pocket change to throw down here and there for some fun. But you can always track it without the money too, which is nice.
I'm about to Venmo Jace $2.50, $2.50. So we're not high rollers. We're not big time sports gamblers, but it's just if you are able to do it and you are comfortable with the logic of everything involved, it's a fun addition to your sports experience. Okay, so that was our first preview show for a game. Obviously the headliner is Iowa State, Kansas State. There's a lot. College football is starting. We're going to be on to week 2, two shows a week starting episode 20. Wow, 20 episodes, and
That's crazy.
Yeah, so we're moving forward. That was our preview show. Obviously, hopefully, next preview show we don't have a ton of Michigan NCAA scandal stuff to talk about, but that was fun, man. Do you have anything else to say regarding these teams or anything we talked about today?
I'm realizing Stanford playing at Hawaii and then also playing an ACC schedule. I've not seen any of the numbers, but they're going to have to be the most traveled team in the country. That is a brutal away schedule they're going to have. Also, my sinuses are killing me right now, so I'm handing this off to you.
Don't worry, we'll get out of here on this. Normally, anyone who plays Hawaii will have a brutal travel schedule, and I wonder if the rule is still the case with the ACC of if you take on Hawaii, you get an extra home game just because you are agreeing to go travel that far west to go to Hawaii. None of that matters right now. What matters is college football is back. We'll see everyone on Saturday. Obviously not on this show, but we're all going to be on here watching college football, enjoying the sport that's back. That's from Jace, from me. My name's Frobode. He's Jace. Thanks for tuning in. It's been Flag for Discussion, episode 19. Peace.